All right, Byron. So it's a new day. That means it's a new week where Disney relinquished a new entry into the MCU, and this time, bro, we got the Eternals. You ready for this shit?
Yeah, hit me with it.
Because I'll tell you one thing. Unlike those fuckers over at DC, dude, Marvel, they never fucking miss critically. And I'll tell you one thing about Eternals, just so I can wipe this in front of the fucking DC fans one more time, just to say we're how many films deep and all this critical acclaim. Let's go on Rotten Tomatoes real quick. What the fuck? The Eternals is the latest entry in the MCU about a group of immortal beings with superpowers who are sent down to live on Earth and can only get involved to protect us from the greatest threats in the universe, the Deviants. That's right. Not Loki, not the Dark Elves, not Ultron, not Dormammu, not even Thanos, but the Deviants. A group of CGI dog creature things who can easily be killed and show little to no threat to our heroes. So, Byron, what did you think of the Eternals?
Well, I definitely think that this was, like a subpar origin story.
Yeah, Eternals was boring as fuck to me. I know in our Dune review, we talked about how more creative and artistic directors should be given the keys to these franchises. With this is the the example you can bring up for the contrary, because this is someone who's trying to be too artsy but forgets that they're directing an MCU movie, honestly. This film is directed by Chloe Zhao, and if you have no idea who the fuck that is, she is the latest winner of the Best Director Award for the Academy Award. She directed No Man Land.
Well, this is interesting that you mentioned that because I was seeing all the reviews and I was like, I kind of want to see exactly what critics had an issue with. And so I kind of read an article, and so one of the main issues I think that they were having was that, like, well, it was weird because I was reading one, and the guy was kind of going back and forth where it's like, well, Chloe Zhao, she made like a boring, uncharacteristic mess, even though she didn't have that much control because she had to play ball with MCU, but she sucks. But yeah, this is definitely an example of like what happens when you are trying to have full artistic control and then like trying to also play ball.
Which is weird because there's actually interviews where with the Eternals, they just kind of let her do whatever the fuck she wanted. It's just weird because on one hand, this film is trying to be the least Marvel film as possible, but at the same time, like, that's a huge weakness because I think what could have benefited this movie is that it needed to have more MCU isms.
Like, I could see, like, in terms of like the lighting and the the way they colored it and some of how some of the shots were set up. Like, okay, yeah, there's definitely like Chloe Zhao influence in there, but it just kind of really felt more like an average run-of-the-mill origin story that is just kind of, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I kind of have to just watch this to understand like what the next movie's going to be, so I can at least cross this off my checklist.
I think what Marvel is great at is introducing new characters to audiences. They do that through like humor and relatability.
Wow, this is awesome. Captain America. I know you too. You're great.
Eternals has none of this shit. Chloe Zhao is on record saying that Zack Snyder and specifically Man of Steel were a huge influence on the movie. And you can tell because the characters are dull and lifeless and are like most Zack Snyder films, they bring up a lot of interesting themes and ideas, but does jack shit with them.
Here's the thing. I certainly don't think all the characters were as done as well as they could have been. But me personally, I think at the very least, I did like what they did with Fastos. I think he was done pretty well in the sense of like kind of how his story played out. Yeah, I liked Gemma Chan, when she was actually given stuff to do and not just kind of like just staring out into the void.
You bring up Gemma Chan, and to me, she's probably one of the most boring protagonists I've seen in a while. Like, I don't know if it was her or the character, but I'll just blame it on the character for now. Is that the character was literally like walking sandpaper? Like, there were legit points where I totally forgot that she was in the movie, and then until she reappeared, and I was like, holy shit, that's right. Not only are you in this movie, you're the fucking main character. Holy shit.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So this goes into my big issue with the film. So in total, there's like 10 Eternals in this movie, more or less, right? Like 9 or 10 Eternals. So the problem is that you have 2 hours, 2.5 hours max to tell a story. So obviously, it's not going to be enough time to cover each character. So either it's like you kind of have to focus on like 1 or 2 and have everybody else just kind of be like standing off to the side, or you try to get like at least half the team and have stories for them. But the problem is that like it's not enough time for each and every character to like get their own arc and like to get developed. And it's also not believable when you start seeing them interact with each other. And the whole point is that they're supposed to be like they've known each other for like 7,000 years. But I don't necessarily buy the relationships between all of the characters. I don't even think some of the characters like even interact with each other on that particular team. Yeah, I think me personally, this would have worked much better as a series, because as a series, then you can give each character their own episode, or at least enough time to develop. You know, then it's more believable. It's like, okay, they're definitely like all friends, and you can kind of see like what they like about each other, what they don't like about each other.
All in all, there's like 12 or 13 main characters.
Yeah.
And that's fucking insane. Like,
and also too, it's like there's certain things in there that like the whole Thana subplot could have been dropped and like nothing would have changed. So like there was no point in having it there.
I mean, what you're saying right there, like, is another huge problem with the movie is like they bring up stuff like Angelina Jolie is starting to have huge memory problems because she's been alive for so long that like her brain is starting to get confused. That inherently is a really interesting concept, but it's only brought up in like face value and doesn't go any deeper than surface level shit. Well, like if this was a miniseries, you could probably have like a full-on episode dedicated to that shit. Or here's a crazy thought. Cut down the number of fucking Eternals in this movie. Make it like a 5 or 6 person team, 7 at most.
Yeah, because then you can introduce them later. Like, there's a way to do it. Like, just because you're adapting a comic does not mean you have to like follow every aspect of the comic. Like, it's why it's called an adaptation. Like, you don't need, you can pull what you need to pull to make your story work. Like,
look how many Avengers are in like Avengers Infinity War. There's a reason why all those fuckers weren't introduced in the first Avengers movie, because it would have been too goddamn much for one movie.
And it also works because they've had like 30 movies or like 20 something movies prior to that to help set everything up. That was the whole plan. But with this one, is just sort of like, well, yeah, we're gonna just jam everything into there.
You brought up useless characters, and one character. Here's a fucking trope I despise, and I get so sick of: useless side characters. And Disney specifically has been on a fucking roll with this shit. I'm talking about, like, we got Emily Blunt's brother in Jungle Cruise, who's literally only there because the movie needs a comedic side character, and he has no use to the story. I know we differ on this, but I would lump Awkwafina for the most part in Shang-Chi. She's only there to make jokes. She's only useful in like 1 or 2 instances. But other than that, literally cut her out of all the other scenes and nothing fucking changes. This one has an egregious one, and it is Kumail Nanjiani's butler, director dude, or whatever the fuck.
Really? I actually liked him, dude. He was really funny. Like, I get like, yeah, he just kind of was there for just comedic, but I actually thought he was really funny.
I despise that bitch.
I can't believe this.
Every time he showed up, all I was thinking is like, why are you here? Like, narratively speaking, there is no fucking reason why this character is here. Like, I tried so hard to come up with even the most cynical arguments and reasons why this character is here, but I couldn't even think of even a joke answer of why he was there. This bitch was fucking useless to me.
Sure, yeah, he may not have been like useful because he's not an Eternal, so he can't really like fight demons and shit. But I feel like a more egregious kind of thing that they did that overshadows it is just the actual deviants themselves. Because here's the thing, the deviants are like, they're not even needed. You could have taken the deviants out, and then that wouldn't have changed the story. When in fact in the comics, like the deviants are like the main enemy, and they're actually, I feel like, really fucking useless, because you have that one like super deviant, whatever the hell his name was, but like he doesn't do anything.
It's like, it's such a waste of time. Every time they're on screen, I was so goddamn bored. They can kill the deviants no problem, so they're not really that much of a threat. And two, like, it's so hard to connect, like, and give a shit what's going on. It's because they're like CGI demon dog things. And I think what I would have liked is their look to be way more human-like, if not like almost identical to humans. You were to use the deviants as the main villain, which this film should have done, is I would have actually kind of liked, like, what if they did like something like Highlander? The Eternals, they're actually hiding out on Earth from the deviants. Like, this would explain why the Eternals like never helped out in any of the conflicts, because they were in hiding. And then you have the deviants come down, they start wiping the Eternals out one by one. They're super hard to kill, so that way, like, they have to slowly come together as a team again in order to take him out. I think that would have been a more interesting approach to this movie instead of what they did.
Yeah, you know, maybe with the addition of these kind of new characters that we're getting, maybe they'll do something more with them in Eternals 2, now that they just kind of gotten like, because I feel like this is more like, hey, it's more like this is obligatory. It's like, hey, we need to sort of like get these introductions out the way, and then they can do something more with it.
Kevin Feige had this, I think he said in an interview once, that they like to treat every single movie they make as if it's the last one they'll ever make. But to that I go like, do you really think that? Like, look at your fucking slate and look how much money Disney's pouring into this shit. You think that like this shit is really the last idea? But I think in theory, this is what they really should have like thought about, like making every movie the best movies it possibly can be, instead of just waiting for a sequel to thoroughly flesh this out. Because at the very end of the movie, they do the typical like Marvel thing where they say like, the Eternals will return. This is like the first movie I can think of in the MCU where I heard people in my theater actively like groan at that title card. And it's like, ooh, maybe you should have like stopped hinging your bets that every single one of your movies will be a banger and people like this shit.
Yeah, but you know, like I said before, like the MCU is not really tripping. I know they're not, because it's like, all right, well,
oh yeah, no,
this is our first kind of like film that kind of got bashed like ever. So Kevin Feige, I mean, here's the thing: Kevin Feige has Spider-Man leaks to deal with. He doesn't give a shit about Eternals. He's fighting to not have an aneurysm after all these fucking leaks.
By far, this isn't like the worst Marvel movie. This is the first like negative like reviewed Marvel film, but this is not the worst one. Yeah. I think Thor: The Dark World is still the reigning champion. I wouldn't really recommend this. It's not my cup of tea. Again, the only reason I'll ever revisit this is maybe to do an MCU rewatch. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch this again.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me it was like, I wasn't bored, but I wasn't thrilled by it either. It was fine. And this is essentially, if you're an MCU fan, like, this is obviously sort of obligatory at this point. Like, you kind of have to see it to see, like,
yeah,
what is the future of the MCU, and just check it off your list. But other than that, there's not much more to it.
On that note, until the next one, goodbye.
See you later.